At my last race, I had a bit of an accident and broke a number of things, but including, as you can see, the seat rails. So it's given me the opportunity to look again at the setup I have for my seat. So what I have is I have these rails, and then I have a slider kit. And the reason I had the slider kit is because two reasons. When I first built the car, I thought that it would be good if I had an instructor drive my car around the track with me in the passenger seat, and I wanted a way to be able to adjust the seat for the instructor. And also there was a time when I thought I might race with someone else. You know, I might split my racing with a second driver. So for those reasons, I installed that. And then in fact, I didn't install this. It was installed by someone else, but this was all at my request. So, you know, it's all as per, you know, the way I'd spec'd it. And then there's this base plate, which screws down onto the standard seat mounts for the BMW 116. Now, I decided, in fact, at the race, when I had the accident, the 4040 team fitted some spare rails that they had, which were in this style. So Motamec rails, and they bolted them directly to the floor. So that did away with a lot of this. In fact, the only thing really comparable is these two. And it meant that I could do away with the slider kit and the base plate. I mean, I could have done away with the slider kit ages ago, but, you know, it was in there anyway. So I thought it'd be worth showing you just what difference this makes in terms of weight. Okay, sorry about the usual problem I have with reflections from my lights in my garage, but hopefully you can see this. So the broken rails weighed 1.73 kilos. The slider kit weighs 2.3 kilos. That is a lot of weight. And what's more, that floor plate that I showed you is 2.7. So that gives me 6.73 kilograms versus the new rails, and I've included all the bolts and everything in this, 1.76. So basically I'll be saving around 5 kilos by installing this revised rail kit. And 5 kilos is a phenomenal amount of weight, particularly with my car, because nobody's been able to explain to me why, but my car is heavier than probably every other car on the grid. It's really strange. It's about 10 or 15 kilos heavier than comparable cars. Now, there are some things I've got in the car, like the battery box is still in it, and the wheel arch liners are still in it, and I chose those things. I wanted to do that, but even if you add up that amount of weight, it still doesn't explain why my car is 15 kilos more. But this obviously is going to contribute to getting me much closer to the weight of my competitors. Okay, so I'll resume this video once I've fitted the seat in the car with the new rails. Right, well, I've temporarily dumped the seat in the car. One thing I did do is I removed my sidebar off the roll cage because it's really difficult to get the seat in and out without damaging things. I can do it once, but as I'm going to probably take this seat in and out several times, I took the crossbar off. Now, a couple of things to point out here is the first thing, you want to take care where you bolt these vertical plates onto this rail. You can, because it's got some sort of offset holes drilled in in this plate, you can position these bolts in different places. Now, what I've found is if you have them positioned in, let's call it the default position, which is the bolt is close to the front of the plate, it fouls with the bolt that actually bolts the rail down onto the chassis. So the position for me is there, about there, and you can see there's plenty of space now to tighten the bolt up and undo it. Whereas if you have the bolt up here, which is where it otherwise would be, it's basically directly above the, these side bolts are directly above the bolt that goes into the chassis. So that's one thing. Second thing, which I've discovered, is this bolt I have in here to locate it is smaller because the standard fixing bolts, which look like this, don't go through the rail. The slot's not big enough. Now I did notice when the 4040 team fitted the temporary rails to my car, the slots had been enlarged, and I didn't know why that was, and now I'm beginning to realise why. So I need to make those slots slightly bigger. It's probably only about, I probably only need about 2 mil, and that will do the job, but they do need to be made bigger. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a large washer on top here so that there's no chance of the head of the bolt pulling through the rail. So I'm going to do that. I might do one underneath as well, although it's obviously it's not as important because the force, if I'm involved in a crash, the force is going to be from the back tilting forward, and it's going to be an upward force trying to wrench the bolt out of the fixing. But we'll do that. So not straightforward, and I can see this could take me a day or two to get this right, but for 5 kilos saving, it's worth every minute I spend. It's time for an update on this. So today's Saturday, and I think the first video I recorded that you saw a bit earlier was recorded on Wednesday. So, it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday now, Saturday afternoon. I haven't been working on it all that time, to be truthful. But I reckon I've put in about 4 or 5 hours on it. So the first problem I had was the slots in the rails weren't big enough, and I filed them out. Filing them out took me about 2 hours per rail, I reckon. Maybe, perhaps I had some breaks in there, but it took me a long time. No, maybe not. That's a bit of an exaggeration, isn't it? It probably took about an hour and a half per rail. I just wanted to go slowly. I tried several files. One of the things I found was that when you buy files, they don't tell you the coarseness of the cut. So I've got files which I think are either second cut or fine cut, and I was filing with those and I wasn't getting anywhere. It was taking me ages. I tried really carefully using an angle grinder to grind them out, but you can't grind sideways into aluminium, I found, at least not with the discs I had. They either clog or something, they just don't do anything. I tried some tungsten carbide burr things that I had, but they weren't all that effective. So in the end I bought another file, and excuse the language, it's called a bastard cut, and that worked, but was still quite slow, but not as slow as the files I already had. So yeah, I think you can probably get something coarser, but it's surprising when you go on all the websites and look at the files. It tells you all about how long they are, how many you get in a pack, all those things. What it doesn't tell you is what actually is the coarseness of the cut on the file. So yeah, pretty useless. I've had the seat in and out, I think, about 4 or 5 times. One thing is, it is much lower because, I haven't got that base plate which would raise it about 10 mil, and then I haven't got the slider kit which is probably about another 20 mil, if not a bit more. So what I found was that when I sat in the seat, it was really low, and so low that I felt that I might lose some accuracy in my driving, for what it's worth. in terms of spotting turning points and apexes. So I have raised it up one position on the brackets from where it was when I drove with the borrowed set of rails at Silverstone. Something else I've learned, which is such an obvious thing, and I've kicked myself for not realising, but if I bring the camera in a bit closer, I think you should be able to see scratches in the anodised finish. And the reason for that, and it's such a stupid reason, is because when I fitted the washers, when I use washers, I nearly always put the, where they're pressed out of a sheet, you get one edge that's quite sharp and the other edge that's slightly rounded. I always put the sharp edge down and have the rounded edge upwards. That's completely the wrong thing to do in this sort of application. The best thing to do is put the rounded side downwards, and then it doesn't mark the, doesn't scratch the finish on the components. So that's that. Next thing I've got to do, I've all my trail fits made sure that where I'd filed out the rails, that the slots came in the right place, and the slots are only slightly bigger than the bolts. So if I show you, there's only, I don't know, 0.5 mm movement. A bit more on that one actually, that's a bit wider. About 1 mil perhaps there, about 0.5 mm there. So I've tried to keep it to a minimum. And what I had planned to do is if they didn't line up, I was going to use washers under the bracket or some sort of packing piece of material to move the brackets around, because I don't really want the slots to be terrifically wide. I've added quite large washers to the bolts, so that's something else I've done. And the other thing I've found with my car, so BMW E87, the best thing to do is to fit this bolt first on this side and then do the other one on this side at the front, because these two are against the transmission tunnel, and then move to the other rail. Obviously you don't want to tighten up the ones on nearest the transmission rail until you've got all the bolts in place, but pretty much get these wound down as, so there's a bit of play. And because they're a devil of a job to get to once the seat's in. The front one, not so much. The rear one is just dreadful. With the roll cage in and everything, it's really difficult to get into that bolt and do it up. The standard bolts have got a Torx head, but the standard bolts won't fit. Well, you can't get a Torx bit onto the top of the bolt if you've got it fitted like this. So that won't work on this side of the seat, but I am using them on the other side. And although these bolts look shorter, actually the threaded portion of these bolts is exactly the same as the threaded portion of the standard seat bolts. So, and they are M10 25mm 1.5 pitch. Right, so I'm going to fit the seat into the car now. Now this may seem like a really stupid thing to tell you about, but I tell you I struggled with this quite a few times. How do you get the seat in through the door? It sounds crazy, but actually it can be more tricky than you think. So the way I've found the best way to do it without causing damage to everything inside the car is to put the seat in head first, put the top in through the door, then you can carefully lift it into place, work it around the roll bar, and then tilt it, and that's it, it's in. I was doing it where I tried to get the seat to go in backwards. I tried to wrap it around the door pillar. I've tried all sorts of things, but this way is pretty effective. It does mean the crossbar in the roll cage has to be removed. I think it'll work anyway, actually. So if you've got one of those is it customs cages? I've got a Gosling cage, but I think if you've got a custom cage, you have that X door bar, don't you? That's you possibly can't remove. I can't remember. So it should work. This method of putting the head in first should work, even with the door bar in place. Okay, I'm going to modify what I said earlier a little bit. You want to put in this front bolt here on the transmission tunnel side, assuming you're in a right-hand drive car. Actually, if you were in a left-hand drive car, it'd still be the transmission tunnel side. But anyway, you want to put that one in first, because otherwise the seat will rock and it could just fall back onto you. So do that first. And then what I did was I very carefully slid the seat forward. I can't show you that because I've got holding the camera, but I slid the whole thing forward as far as it would go, and that made it much easier to put in the rear bolt on the transmission tunnel side. So I'll show you that in a second. So here you can see the other bolt, and what I did was I slid the seat forward to there and dropped the bolt in. And I'll leave it like that until I get the bolts in the other side, and then I'll go round tightening them up, probably starting from the one at the rear and then going to the one at this one here at the rear, and then going to the one at the front on the transmission tunnel side. I never know whether I'm going into too much detail in this, but one thing that frustrates me when I watch videos is when they say, now you bolt the seat in, and then the next shot is, oh, here's the seat bolted in, you know, without actually telling you all the pain and anguish of getting the seat through the door and getting the bolts in place. So I thought I'd cover all of it. And there it is. Happy with the result, actually. I think it's come out well. I've shed quite a bit of weight from the whole setup, and raising it just that little bit, one stop up on these side plates, I think that has made a difference. It seems a reasonable compromise. Obviously, from a performance or handling point of view, you really want the seat to be as low as possible. But I prefer to be able to, you know, see what I'm doing, you know, see where I'm going, and I felt it was just a little bit too low. This still may be a bit too low for me, in which case I'll make use of the further stops on the... I've got one more stop to go on the front, and as you can see, I've got a few to go on the back there, so I could raise it a bit further, but we'll see how we get on the track with it like this. So I hope you found that useful and interesting, and I'll catch you on the next one.